Hello, I'm Oral Gibson. Welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. I have a very interesting guest in the program this evening. You all know this lady, Miss Brooks. How are you doing?
Hi. Hello, Oral. How are you?
I'm fine. Good that you make it back again after, 3-4 years?
Yes, it's been a while.
Well, it's good to have you. You are managing director for the Smdf?
Yes, correct. St. Martin Development Fund.
So that's a place with a lot of money, right?
Yes, that's quite a bit. We do manage money for social programs.
Yeah. And you're quite busy, I assume.
Yes, the last few years have kept us very, very busy. Actually, I don't believe you had me on during that time, but in 2020 and 2021, we had quite a bit of COVID response programs. So we did the income and unemployment support programs for government, so dispersing funds to people who were dismissed from their jobs due to COVID. Also public transportation operators, taxi drivers, bus drivers, vendors. We also disperse funds to them.
That was a lot of work.
It was. And then on top of that, we managed a food assistance program where we dispersed food assistance to persons in need who were affected by the pandemic.
So, I'm going to come back to that because I want you to tell us a little bit about that experience during the pandemic. But what about you? Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, for those who don't know me, I am Akeisha Brooks. I am from St. Martin. I grew up here from 0 to 18. I went to St. Dominic High School, and then after high school, I left and went to university in the U.S. So I went to Florida A&M University for my bachelor's, and I got a bachelor's in political science. And then right after, I went into my master's program at American University, and there I got a master's in international development. And life brought me back to St. Martin immediately thereafter. I worked as a policy advisor in economic affairs for a few years, and then I joined SMDF in 2017. So full circle to come back home.
How come political science? Then quite interesting.
I think I just grew up, listening to my parents and family discussions about what was going on in the then Netherlands Antilles, also in the Caribbean region.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to the news reports every morning, and I was so interested in how things came to be. So what led to people, different residents being in different situations. And I realized that government policy and legislation ended up determining a lot of those things. So I wanted to look at things from a very macro level, and political science seemed like the right place to do it. It was quite a bit of things about critical thinking, public administration, also economics, because of course, money and everything determines what a country can and can't do. And it gave me a very broad look at communities, how people make decisions and how their lives are affected.
So when you worked as a policy advisor, where was that? What ministry?
So that was in TIAT. So I was an economic policy advisor. That was from 2013 until the end of 2016.
That's a really powerful ministry.
I think all the ministries are important. TIAT is a very complicated one because it is, of course, very outward facing. So people think about the Tourism Bureau is under the Ministry of TIAT. You have Civil Aviation and Maritime Affairs. So we see all these planes landing, the regattas this weekend. So that's also a big part of it. But it's also very internal because the economy and economic policy determine a lot about a country, and then also the quality of life that people have.
Yeah. So when you move over to St. Martin Development Fund, how was that?
It was definitely a transition, going from government, which is a rather large institution, to SMDF. At the time, there were only 3 of us within the organization. So we keep things very tight. Everyone truly contributes a great deal towards the organization. You see the impact of everyone's contributions. So it was definitely a transition. And then also seeing more of the NGO community. Inside government, I didn't see a lot of civil society. So what the different nonprofit organizations were doing and how their efforts were making such huge impact. So I think coming to SMDF allowed me to see within the community a lot more clearly and deeply than I would have seen it at government.
So those NGOs are quite huge. There are many of them now.
There are so many NGOs. They're doing such great work. whether it is with afternoon school programs, you have food pantries, you have different organizations that are providing social care to vulnerable groups. So the NGO community is large, it's dynamic, and it's so impactful.
So what surprised you most about your work?
I think what has surprised me the most is how much you can stretch a gilder.
Really?
Yes, and truly the value of a gilder where it comes to feeding others or providing clothing, providing emergency housing. I really have come to discover what it means to use a gilder efficiently and with intention.
So now what you do is you get the funds from the government of St. Martin or the Dutch government? How explain that, please?
So we have had a very long-standing relationship with the government of St. Martin. So we have thus far it's been 9 years. Actually, I think we're in our 10th year now, where the government has given direct subsidy support to SMDF, and we use the vast majority of that support rather for our NGO funding activities. So we receive money from government and then we disperse it to NGOs.
So it's only from the government of St. Martin?
No, the past few years we've been very fortunate that we've had other partners, such as the government of the Netherlands. So the food assistance program was funded by the Ministry of BZK. Additionally, after Irma, we did some home repairs and home construction that was also funded by the Ministry of BZK. But we also have private donors, so private entities. So for example, the Windward Islands Bank has been a fantastic partner to us. We have a
one of the first private.
Yes, exactly. I must always commend Windward Islands Bank. We had a meeting with the managing director, Mr. Downs, and we presented the organization. We presented our contributions to our community, and they understood our vision and mission, and they came on, and they've been fantastic thus far.
So you said you only have a staff of 3?
Yes.
And you handle all that money. How you did it?
Long days and long nights.
No, I mean, I'm curious, with 3 persons in the office, with millions of guilders.
Yeah, it is definitely tough. For some of the other projects, we would retain project support.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, the food assistance program, we had 2 additional project support team members. And then we also have a wonderful group of volunteers that show up without question, that we value so much. So while we do have a core team of 3, and we are currently looking to expand, it is definitely a group effort. But yeah, we just want to be as effective and efficient as possible. And in keeping our operational costs low, we're able to channel more funds into the community. And at the end of the day, that's what we really want to do.
So the food assistance program, how did that work? There were vouchers, etc. Tell us how that went.
So the program started off doing food boxes in 2020, so as soon as the pandemic started. And then we worked with the Netherlands Red Cross, and we were able to introduce electronic vouchers.
Oh, okay.
And we continued that in 2021. WIB was an amazing partner. They provided us with, they looked like gift cards. And we were able to load a monetary value onto those gift cards. And then recipients were able to take those cards to the supermarkets and purchase whatever they needed. Of course, it had to be food items or cleaning supplies. And we were really happy with that system because it gave everyone a sense of agency and a sense of being able to purchase what was best for them and their family members. Because the challenge with the food box is that you take very generic items that might not work for everyone. So, for example, a family with a small infant might need diapers or formula, and that might not necessarily come into a food box. But with a voucher, electronic voucher, that parent can go into the supermarket and buy the necessary items for that child.
So recipients had to come to your office to get the card? How that work?
Well, they didn't come to our office. We use a Phillipsburg Cultural Center.
Oh, okay.
Because our offices would not have been able to accommodate those persons. I think we assisted about 3,500 households. So 3,500 persons would come and get their vouchers. So they would go to
3,500 homes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was really significant. But so many people were affected by the pandemic. Whether a person lost their job or their employer had to decrease the number of hours that they worked, most people had their income affected in one way or another. And a lot of employers they really were trying to be as diligent as possible and considerate as possible to retain their employees. But the number of hours were just significantly decreased. Of course, we had no tourists here, so it was difficult.
I think if there's one program that I admired during the pandemic, because I was against some of them, I think some of them were really wasting money. But that food assistance program was really, really necessary. It helped a lot of families. I think sometimes we sit back and we complain about outside and the Dutch government, but without that, it would have been a disaster.
It really came at a very crucial moment. One things we saw, for example, were a lot of seniors who were dependent on some sort of financial support from like their kids or grandkids. But then if the child or grandchild is struggling in their own home, how can they give 200 guilders to their parent or grandparent? So in those cases, we were able to assist both the grandparents directly with their own voucher, but also the household of the child. And yeah, it really was a very impactful program. I think that was the one that people were most vocal about, and just expressing their gratitude for the program and how it eased a lot of burdens for a lot of people.
And that money came from the Dutch government fund?
Yes, it did.
How much was it?
I think in the end, what we received actually was roughly 7 million guilders, and that's what we had to account for.
And how long was the program for?
The program was for a period of 3 months, so July, August, and September of 2021.
Wow. So I guess you got to be very happy with that performance from your office.
Of course. You know, when it's almost an emergency situation, because we had to be activated very, very quickly, you have to respond to the situation as quickly as you possibly can. There are so many different stakeholders. So with the limited amount of time that we had, and of course a very small team, I was definitely very pleased and proud of our performance with that program.
You ever expected that you would be part of something like that?
No, not at all. And, you know, I was formally appointed managing director as of January 1st, 2020. So I had, let's say, 2 months of regular operations, and then COVID came in March. So if anyone had asked me in January of 2020 what I had envisioned for the organization, I could not have predicted food assistance for 3,500 people.
But at least, you worked on the Ambassador Franca.
That's true.
I always call him Ambassador.
And he's still a mentor to me. So, you know, in times of crisis, sometimes I just give him a call to ask him for his advice or opinion on something, because I still don't have all of the answers. I don't think I'll ever have the answers. So sometimes you have to, you know, go out for external counsel.
All right. So that was one program. You dealt with NGOs with that, the Red Cross. How did that really work? Because you have the card you told us about, but they had to go through trying to figure out who was eligible and who was not, so not to abuse it, right? Yeah,
so we had a online registration, a digital registration process for that. Because while we wanted to reach as many households and individuals as possible, we also knew that we had budgetary constraints, and we wanted to ensure we were getting to those that needed it most. So there was an application process. People had to provide their IDs as well as the IDs of the persons that they said were living in their households. We needed income information about their living situation, whether they paid rent or not, if there were small children in the household, any type of indicators as to whether or not the household was actually in need. And then after that, we did a little bit of review of the information, and then we would notify the person if they were in the program or not. And once they were in the program, they were assigned to one of the partners, such as the Netherlands Red Cross or Freegan Food Foundation. And then those organizations, as well as us, would assist them with their food support.
I know we got some complaints from persons who didn't have access to online, and that was a challenge for some people.
Yeah, and it was definitely an understandable challenge, also because we were still in COVID. So it was very difficult for us to get a space that could accommodate the volume of people that requested in person. We tried that at the onset where we used the help desks in Cole Bay and also in Dutch Quarter. And we tried to do registration on an appointment basis so that persons could get an appointment, come in, and then get in-person assistance. The challenge with that was one person said that they had an appointment and they told 3 other people told 3 other people.
Wow.
So rather than having a very organized, okay, we can accommodate 5 people, in a 20-minute block, we ended up having 150 people outside a very small space. And for security reasons, as well as, trying to maintain social distancing, it just wasn't very feasible. And I will say I definitely heard the feedback about the online registration. And I think SMDF, like so many other entities, had to quickly transition to a digital way of life. And unfortunately, we didn't have the time to prepare the community for that transition.
Yeah.
And I know I've heard it from my colleagues in other entities that they also had similar feedback of people complaining, I need to submit this documentation online, I need to go to this portal. And we all wish that we had the time at the onset to educate people and help them to navigate. We were all responding to COVID and trying to adapt so quickly, it didn't happen.
I think if there's one good thing about COVID, it forced us to go digital, forced us to use the internet to do a lot of things that we didn't want to do at the time. So that was quite interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even though I think a lot of entities, like for example, government with the Public Service Center, they've been trying to get people for years before COVID to, set up their appointments online. But for whatever reason, it wasn't catching on. And then COVID all forced us to make our appointments online.
Exactly.
So indeed, it has sped up. Not everybody is happy with the process or being forced to be sped up. But yes, I think it's great. It also allows us to do more virtually. And at least for our organization, we have been able to do a lot more far quickly.
So when it comes to the vouchers, the food vouchers, what was the maximum and the minimum there?
Yeah, so depending on the size of the household, so how many people were in a household, then a family could get between 300 and 450 guilders per month that they were in the program. So like if your family had 6 people, then you'll be eligible for 450 guilders. But if your family had fewer people, you might have gotten 300 guilders. And that was, again, to be fair, because a family with 2 people can't be looked at the same way that you look at a family with 6 people. So it was definitely assessed on a case-by-case basis for the household.
So you got the voucher once a month? How did that work?
So you got what we call the top-up. So you would come and get the value added to the card once per month.
Okay.
So if you were in the program, accepted in the program in July, you would come in July, you would have come back in August, and you would have come back in September. And then you were able to use the value of the voucher any day that you wanted. So it was up to you to use a card however you wanted to after the fact.
It had to be in that specific month?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we actually had the cards hold their value until the end of December of 2021 because, we had some people come to us and they said, they were trying their hardest to not spend it so that they could stretch it as long as possible.
Okay.
Which also makes sense,
definitely.
if you're in a difficult circumstance, you don't want to spend $450 in 1 month.
Right.
Instead, you try to budget and you get your essentials every week or every month, and then you go from there. So I think that our decision to have the cards hold their value until the end of December was beneficial to a lot of families, rather than having to force them to use, and then maybe they bought fresh fruits and vegetables and then they went bad before they could consume them. So we allow people to use the cards until December.
In case you've just joined us, I'm Oral Gibbs. This is Oral Gibbs Live. My guest is Ms. Brooks. She's the Managing Director at the St. Martin Development Fund. We're here speaking with her on Hot 99.9 FM radio station, YouTube, Facebook, and TV career. You also handle the payroll support program?
The Income and Unemployment Support Program.
Oh, okay.
So within the SSRP, that was a program, the St. Martin Stimulus and Relief Program that was developed by government in response to the pandemic.
Yeah.
There were, I would say, two arms. So you have payroll support, and that was managed by SDV.
Right.
That was for employers who kept their employees on. The payroll support program would subsidize part of their payroll costs. And then you have the Income and Unemployment Support Program, and that was managed by us. And that program dispersed 1,150 guilders monthly to persons who were either dismissed due to the pandemic or if they were independent businesses, so a sole proprietor, a person with a vending license, a bus or taxi driver.
And the figure you mentioned, that's the minimum wage amount, right?
Yeah, it was trying to be in line with minimum wage, so it was 1,150 guilders at the time for each month that the person was approved.
How many months? Go 3 months also?
No, that one was significantly longer.
I know, just ask you.
We started in May of 2020 and went until September of 2021, so it was about 16 months.
Yeah, and anyway, I'm not gonna say what I'm thinking, but it helped a lot of people, and some people abused it, unfortunately, and that always happens. You can't deal with everything perfectly. But how many persons got from that?
Throughout the entire program period, I think it was about 2,200 people, and that varied. So, for example, we saw that persons who might have been dismissed in June of 2020 may have fortunately gotten a job by December of 2020, so they were out.
So you were keeping track to make sure that they...
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh,
okay.
yes. For that program, and it was a monthly application period.
Wow, so you really had it to the fire.
Yes, yes. They were, like I said, very long days for a time. But to your point about people abusing programs, I think that is an unfortunate reality that goes with social programs. And that is not just in St. Martin, but that is globally. When people see an opportunity for free.
Yeah, they season it.
Exactly. Not everyone looks at themselves and says, do I really need this right now? Am I taking away from someone else who actually needs it?
And that's the problem.
And that's the frustrating problem. And I always tell people, the reason when we launched these programs, when we told people that we wanted them to think of another, is because resources are very finite. No one has a bottomless pit of money that they can make available at this time. If anyone does have it, please let me know so you can share the wealth. But resources are always finite. And when someone takes a place unnecessarily or undeservingly, they are removing an opportunity for someone. So we always encourage people to be a little bit reflective about whether or not you're really in need and to just not take away an opportunity for someone else.
So you said that was 15 months?
Yes. So from May of 2020 to September of 2021.
And over 2,000 persons?
Yeah.
And were there any kind of... Did you all find any person who was getting food assistance and still getting that, or they were separated?
So there were two separate programs, but we did see instances where a person was receiving both. So, for example, someone who had been laid off was receiving 1,150 guilders from the unemployment support program, and then they were also getting food assistance via the food assistance program.
That was okay?
Yeah, it really was, because we also looked at it in the reality of the St. Martin context. So if you are let's say a single parent, one parent and two kids, how much can you do with 1,150 guilders? You can likely pay your rent. Maybe you can afford to keep your utilities on, but 1,150 guilders does not necessarily stretch very far in our context. That's just the reality of the situation. So 450 guilders in food support is going to supplement that. And then altogether, maybe you have 15 or 1,600 guilders for your family. So yes, we did see instances where persons were registered and benefiting from both programs, and that wasn't necessarily an issue for us. Instead, it was more of a call for action and a clear indication that there were needs in the community.
I like what you said, that you take into consideration the St. Martin part of it, because I just wish government was like that, man. Wow, it would be so better, you know. But it's good because you had people really suffering. I knew people who had a lot of problems.
Yeah, those were really difficult times. And there were a few times where we had people calling us asking for assistance. Let's say a person didn't qualify for the unemployment support program for whatever reason. And they would call and say, I'm about to be evicted. I had a lady, for example, she called and she said that her landlord had turned off the lights because she had not been able to make rent for 2 months at that point in time. So those were really, really difficult times. I'm happy to see that there seems to be some level of economic recovery, but I hope we don't forget that there are vulnerable people in our community that will continue to need support in one way or another.
It would have been interesting, if, and I don't know if you all are doing this, to track those persons, to see what they're doing, how they're doing 2 years later, if they got a job, etc. That would have been interesting.
You are actually the second person in the past few weeks to suggest
Really?
that. Yes, truly. And it's something that we are looking to explore, to ask beneficiaries of these programs how their lives have progressed since, to see the realities of their lives. So you're actually the second person to suggest it.
I'm just curious because I think what I saw during COVID was the kind of suffering I've never seen in my life. We came out from Hurricane Irma that literally almost destroyed this island, and then we had COVID, so the pressures on the families were just enormous.
And you're so right. You know, there was Irma, and then I think in 2019 people started to feel like, okay, we're coming back.
Right.
You know, much of the hotels and entities in the hospitality industry were coming back online, so there was hope. And then right behind that hope was the pandemic. And if you're already in a situation that is very high pressure, that you feel a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in your life, having a pandemic and a global shutdown does not accommodate that at all in any which way, shape, or form. So indeed, I think that the pandemic was a difficult time for us as individuals, as communities, as a country. And I hope that we don't forget that we were able to show up for each other and be supportive of one another in that difficult time.
All right. So in that program was how many millions of guilders?
The food assistance?
Yeah.
The food assistance?
No, not the food.
Oh, the income and unemployment? Yeah. I think in total it's about 20 million guilders.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And that now, how did that work? You got the 1,100 guilders, you said?
So the recipients received 1,150 guilders.
Was that also digital?
Yes. So, but that was actual cash. So for the income and unemployment support programs, we received the money directly from the government of St. Martin.
Yeah.
And we had an online application portal, again, everything digital. And in that portal, the applicants had to submit the necessary documents, so their IDs, the dismissal letter, a pay slip.
Dismissal, oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you were unemployed, we needed to see proof that you were unemployed. And then even behind that, we did a separate check to verify your information.
What if you was unemployed before that?
Then no, you were not COVID unemployed.
Oh,
and that
okay.
was a very specific criteria that the approved applicants had to be COVID unemployed or directly impacted by the pandemic.
Wow.
So that was actually something that we had to do quite a bit of clarification on at the start of the program, because we had people who had been unemployed
before.
Exactly.
Wow.
And they just saw unemployment and assumed that it was for everyone who was without work, but that program was specifically for the COVID unemployed.
Well, then that made it more harder for them, huh? Because they can't find a job now either.
Correct. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It was a very, very difficult time. So if you were trying to enter the job market in the first part of 2020, there was nothing there for you, really. Very little. So for that program, once a person was approved, we would actually do a direct bank transfer to their bank accounts.
Okay, so these are the two programs that you all dealt with during COVID, right?
Mhm.
And if you had to pick which one you thought was easier, which one?
Oh boy. I think the income and unemployment support program was easier because it required very little of the beneficiaries. So
Okay.
once they submitted their documentation online, we did all the work and then we just did a direct transfer to their bank accounts. And then we notified them via email, the funds have arrived on your account. The food program became a bit more intensive because we had a lot of time where we had to work with beneficiaries. And again, it's very, very difficult to work with so many people in a very small span of time. So not that I want to go back into COVID times, but if I had to pick, I would pick the income and unemployment support program.
You know, on St. Martin, we're made up of a lot of people from all over the world and all over the Caribbean. And when we get upset, we jump on these people, especially from the Caribbean region. But some of them are here for generations, actually. Some of them are here, their children are born here, their grandchildren, everything else. And some people think, well, they shouldn't get support. But you all didn't ask where the person came from. Was that a qualification? It didn't matter, right?
For the income and unemployment support program, as long as you had a St. Martin issued ID, that was it.
That's it.
St. Martin issued ID. Because the question wasn't about where you're from. The question was, are you a resident of St. Martin so that you can prove that you were working on St. Martin and dismissed due to COVID? That's it. And these questions are that you pose about who has the right to, those are questions outside of our purview. We do not subscribe to those questions. Our question for ourselves is, who can we help and how can we help them?
But you're aware of what people are saying, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm a part of this community, so of course I heard it.
Yeah.
But that is not something that we subscribe to because we see each individual and we see each individual's needs.
Yeah.
And additionally, I think it's important to consider that if we're living in a community with other people that are struggling, we also need to think about the larger picture about safety and security. So we only thought about meeting a need. And indeed, people are very opinionated. I think social media has made it even easier for us to be opinionated. But you have to stay the course and remember the purpose and intention of what you're doing. And sometimes you have to block out the noise. You hold on to the constructive criticism and you factor that into your next decisions. But some of the other noise, unfortunately, you just gotta close your ears.
But I tell you, I just can't imagine what would have happened to St. Martin without those two programs that you all have. I don't like the one with the business sector because that was really abused tremendously. But the program that you handled at the St. Martin Development Fund, they were necessary. I think it really saved St. Martin, and the money came from the Dutch government to the government of St. Martin. And I think that's part of that whole fund of what $500 million it was, right? So you did all of that. So now everything is back to normal, relaxing at your office and have much work to do.
I will say it's not as hectic as it once was, but we are not ever fully relaxed. We're actually about to launch a new program. We actually did the formal launch last week, Tuesday. We are implementing, on behalf of the government of St. Martin, the plastic-free St. Martin project. Plastic-free.
Finally.
Yes, right? And I'm happy to see that you have that feedback. We're very happy to see that there seems to be quite a bit of community support already. And the goal of the project is to formally eliminate single-use plastics across St. Martin. So that is the plastic shopping bags. We want to extend it to straws, styrofoam containers, as much as we can to help mitigate the negative impact of this type of waste in our community.
I don't know of anyone who would be against that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that is really the sentiment at the launch and after the launch. We only got positive feedback.
Wow.
In the coming weeks, we're going to start stakeholder consultations. So we are meeting with environmental groups We're going to be reaching out to different sectors of the business community, so the hotels, supermarkets, restaurants, to understand and see where they're at with their transitions, but then to also get their support and have them buy into this project as well.
We've been shopping with our own bags for years and buying straw, those metal straw, they can clean them out and everything else. So in our home, we try to support and protect the environment. I think the whole community needs to get there, and it's very, very difficult because of St. Martin, the way it's made up. So many different people, and sometimes we think that it's only our people who pollute or who throw garbage anywhere. It's not true. I see people from all over the world, all different colors, doing things that really, really embarrass you if you see what they do at times right here in St. Martin. So I think whatever campaign needs to go out there, it just can't target the local population, which is here all the time, but it has to target everyone. So even if you're visiting St. Martin, you're made aware, don't do it, because I see a lot of visitors throwing cans out of the car and doing all kind of crazy things also.
Yeah, I think waste management, like so many other issues, is a national issue. Waste management is a national issue. So with that means we need to take a national approach. That means we need to speak to all segments of our society. That means that we have to ensure that any type of publications or public awareness campaigns are multilingual, because we're taking into consideration the realities that we have a multilingual population. That means that we need to reach out to all segments of our community, because we want to reach everyone to talk about this national issue.
I mean, all media too.
Exactly.
Not just the newspapers.
Exactly.
They're famous for in St. Martin.
Exactly. It means that we need to include everyone into this initiative. And we're addressing single-use plastics, but we are part of a larger waste management conversation that is happening on St. Martin. And that national campaign has to speak to residents and visitors alike, exactly as you mentioned it. And one of the reasons that we want to have the hotels on board with this project is because they can serve as our ambassadors to visitors. So when a visitor comes to St. Martin, the hotels can tell them about our policies and our approaches to waste management. Because then we can say firmly that we are passing the message along to residents and visitors alike. So we want to have everyone be an ambassador to this project throughout its implementation cycle and thereafter.
I like that, because too often when we think about garbage and littering, we think about our people, and it's everyone. So we have to cover everyone. Also, that program you mentioned, that's going to start when?
So we will actually start the implementation part at the latter part of March.
Oh, okay.
So we are very fortunate that the program is being funded by the European Union. So the government of St. Martin received a grant.
How much money is that?
Okay, so for this project, our budget is around 300,000 euros. And there are other projects.
Not much at all.
No. So again, we're going to have to be very efficient with how we execute the project.
Yeah.
But it's part of other programs that the government is doing, and we're very fortunate to be able to even receive the funding for this. So we're very grateful to the European Union, Expertise France, and Resembid, because like so many things in life, change comes with a cost. And, the cost of awareness, public relations, whether it's radio, print, social media, they all come with a cost. So the budget for this project allows us to actually cover those costs, as well as doing some surveying and measuring of public sentiment, because we really want to know how people feel about waste management currently, how they feel about the transition away from single-use plastics, and if they are buying into that project and that initiative.
You need to know all of that, really? I can give you the answer right now.
Go ahead.
I think everybody wants to see a cleaner, better environment. I can't imagine anyone being against removing plastic bags from the island.
I think everyone wants to see a better St. Martin, but does everyone want to do their part to contribute to a better St. Martin? And I think those are two very different questions. If you stand on the sideline and you look in, then you want to see better. But if you remove yourself from the sideline and you get into the race, then you're contributing towards better.
Because I think what happens is if you show people the benefits, I'm driving around Colbert, I see black plastic bags flying all over the place, sticking in trees, etc. It's harmful for sea life too. There are many benefits to removing plastic bags from the island, from everywhere. I think the approach, and this is not your fault, but the approach has been over the years from those who were responsible and still are responsible to make sure that this program starts early on with a younger population, young children from school age going all the way up. It was never done. I had Maria on the program at Shimon recently, and she was telling me about Curacao and Aruba. There's this campaign going on still. The first time I saw it was back in the 80s. It's still going on, letting people know don't throw garbage out your car, etc., etc. It doesn't happen in St. Martin. And if it happened in St. Martin, like I told her, then it's going to be done to their friends only. So you couldn't have the most popular television program or popular radio program. If you're not friends with the right people, you don't get it. And then there's a large segment of the population who don't get the message. We need to change. If we can change that, and that's not your responsibility, that's the responsibility of people who know who I'm speaking about, by the way. If that can change, we can fast track this because we're behind. The French side is way ahead of us when it comes to this.
Yeah, firstly, I agree with you that we are behind on, waste management as a country.
Right.
Secondly, I also agree with you that any type of campaign for change, it cannot be sporadic. It needs to be a consistent message.
For a long time.
Exactly. So the fact that Curacao and Aruba have this same message that's being publicized and shared for 40 plus years, that's exactly how we need to do it. When I was younger, we had the Take Pride, Don't Throw It Outside campaign. And I remember that from childhood, and it's still ingrained in my mind. That's a beautiful message that should have been shared consistently for years so that everyone who is on St. Martin, whether living here full time or visiting, sees that message and buys into that message. So a big part of this project, the single-use plastics, will be to instill and develop a message that is going to stand the test of time. We call it a legacy message. So we want a message that leaves a very strong feeling with the people and one that the people are happy to spread throughout. So yeah, it is definitely a long-term project to not just develop the material, but to ensure the material is spread into all segments of our community by all media, however you can. I
got to go to a quick break. All right, I went over my time. In case you just joined us, I'm Earl Gibbs here with Ms. Brooks. She's the Managing Director for St. Martin Development Fund. When we come back, we're going to continue speaking with her right here on Earl Gibbs Live on Hot 99.9 FM radio station.
Make use of WIB mobile banking with easy access and direct usage of face recognition, PIN code, or fingerprint. Download WIB mobile banking app and make your transaction from anywhere at any time. For more information, visit wib-bank.net/quick-login.
Hot 99.9 FM radio station. If you would like to advertise on Hot 99.9 FM radio station, give us a call, 520-6070. That's 520-6070. And my guest on the program this evening, I shouldn't say this evening. I have to get out of this. And that's so difficult because this program is on demand. You can watch it 24 hours, so I shouldn't say good evening, right? Anyway, my guest is Miss Brooks. She is the Managing Director for the St. Martin Development Fund, and she's my guest in the program. So what else happening by you?
I think we are also, we have so much going on at the same time that sometimes I need to keep my head on. But what we're also looking at, we are also looking to extend our sources of funding. Mm-hmm. So we are in the process of applying.
You need more money?
For lack of a better term, yes, in a very concise way.
I want to put this in modern language.
In a concise way, yes, we need more money. We see it every year, mm-hmm. that the needs of the community, unfortunately, are significantly greater than what we have available to invest into the community. So that's why we are looking to expand our sources, mm-hmm. so that we can do even more. So we are applying to some grants from the European Union directly, in hopes that those are successful. And then we'll also be revising our policy plan next year, which is a very exciting endeavor that we are doing in the coming months. SMDF has a policy plan that runs from 2013 to 2023. And that policy plan dictates the areas of funding and the areas of work. So right now our areas of work are youth development, social care, senior care, so the elderly, poverty alleviation, gender support, and community development.
Wow, it's a lot.
It is. But we are uncertain if that fully encompasses where we need to be focused.
Well, those are the most important parts, I think.
There are, but there might be another area that we are not fully cognizant of or leaning into. So the revision of the policy plan gives us that opportunity to talk to our community partners to see if there are other areas that we are not properly addressing so that we can meet those needs. And that's going to be a fun endeavor because it's very much asking the community about us, their thoughts and sentiments about us as an organization, our work, if our work has been impactful and if there are other areas that we need to delve into.
So the first one was 2013 to 2023?
Correct.
So now you're going to have another 10 years?
Yes, that's the intention. Because 2023 is the end of that first 10 years, right. And the organization was incorporated in 2012 and began operations in 2013. So now, we've gotten past our first decade almost. So the question is, what's next on the horizon? What should be our strategic plan and vision for the future?
As a St. Martin person, what surprised you about St. Martin socially?
That's a really, really tough question to answer because I think...
I know people don't like to come on this show to say I'm sorry, it just came out like that.
When I joined SMDF, one thing that pleasantly surprised me was how many people have been informally taking care of our community very quietly. And these are people who, oftentimes did it out of their own pockets at their own cost. And it has been beautiful to discover that part of our community because oftentimes we think that, there are more people coming in, we've lost that sense of community. But it's not that we've lost it, it's just changed a little bit compared to what it was maybe in the 80s and 90s. So I think that's been a very pleasant surprise. But the challenge remains resources availability. And I think we all have to consider what our contributions are going to be to our community. I think there are certain instances where we need to really be open and considerate to others as well. So look, I love St. Martin with everything. I say I love her plenty. I love her deeply. And I see all of the possibilities that she holds. I just think that as a community and a country, we need to hold hands towards a shared vision.
Yeah, you said something a while ago. I'm just kidding here, pulling your legs now. A lot of people always say they're afraid to come on the show because you notice I don't have anything written down, no questions, nothing like that. I've been doing that now for 39 years. And you said, that's a difficult question. I'm going to ask you, please take it back. Let me tell you what it is. Some people come here, and after the interview, they say to me, well, boy, wow, it's over. I didn't want to come because when I told them I was going to be an oral guide, they said, oh boy, it's difficult. Honestly speaking, is it that difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. And indeed, you have nothing written down. There's no notepad that you're referring back to. But I think an excellent interview often feels like a conversation where there are two people listening to each other. And as you pose your questions, it's clear that you're listening to my responses.
Although I'm doing 1,000,001 things at the same time.
Multitasking. So no, it's not difficult at all, but you do clearly encourage your guests to think and reflect.
That's nice. But I'll tell you one thing, if you're a politician, it'll be different.
Well, that's a realm I don't plan on going into, so I'll take the easy route.
Different. For politicians, it's completely different. They ask you for their support, and you're supposed to ask them what they're doing. You're different. You're doing community work, helping others in the community. Of course, you're being paid for it, but you're doing an excellent job, and that's what's important. So you said you need one more person in the office.
Yes.
How are you going to apply for that? How that person going to apply for the position?
So they can go to our website, smdf.sx/opportunities, and there is a vacancy for a program associate.
Program associate.
Yes.
What that entails.
So that person will be helping us on the program and project management side. So whether that is writing grant proposals, as we said, we're looking
That's
for more funding.
That's a special skill.
It really is. So that person will be assisting with writing grant proposals, but then also supporting the implementation, execution of projects as they come online. So indeed, we are looking for what might be like, a very specific niche type of person with experience. But I do believe that there is a candidate out there. So if you are that candidate or you know that candidate, please have that candidate apply to the vacancy.
Okay. So, it's quite interesting because Simran Development Fund, I think after listening to all the things you said here on this program, it really opened my eyes to what you're doing. You think people don't realize at times what you're really doing at that office?
Yes. Well, first things first, I know that's definitely happening because people still mistake us for the Housing Foundation.
Yeah, no, we all, even I sometimes make mistake. It's strange. It's so close. The names too are so close.
They are.
Yeah.
But I think that the community has learned quite a bit about us in the past 5 years. They've learned quite a bit about our efforts. The fact that we truly are about community, that we lean into assisting wherever we can. And the support that we've gotten over the past few years speaks volumes to that. Whenever I wear, one of my shirts with the SMDF logo, people stop and say, good work, and I know it happens to my colleagues as well. So we are definitely very, very grateful and thankful for the community support because it is what drives us. So when the days are very long, knowing that we're doing it for a community that sees our efforts, it makes it a lot easier.
So, and you handle millions of guilders and you make sure that everything is done by the book.
Yes, sir. We are so very audited.
I know.
That is one thing that we take very, very seriously because, and I tell everyone this is not my money. It is someone else's money. It is likely a taxpayer's money. So if it's funds that came from the government of St. Martin, it is taxpayers' money. If it is money that came from the Netherlands, the government of the Netherlands, it is taxpayers' dollars, their euros. Right. If it comes from a private sector donor like WIB, it is money that could have gone into their profits that they have chosen to give to us to redistribute. Wherever those funds come from, they could have been used for someone else. They are a reflection of someone else's efforts. And we want to be very, very, very transparent about how those funds are used, and we want to be intentional about it as well.
Well, Ms. Brooks, I want to thank you for coming and being my guest of the program. Always good having you here in the program. The first time you came, you was just working, right? Yes. Yeah. Now you're managing director. So good job. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Anything else you'd like to add before you go?
No, I want to say thank you very much, Oral, for having me, for allowing me to share some of the good works that SMDF has been up to the past few years. And I just hope that the community continues to support us as we continue.
All right, again, thank you and much success. And that's it for now. See you next time right here on Oral Gibbs Live. Till then, take care. Bye.